Welcome back to another episode of Day in My Tech Life. My name is Simone B, also known as Bees, and today we have a very special guest. We have Augustine Degorl. He is the founder of Symposia, and he's previously a senior GRC analyst. So welcome on to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I don't know if people know who you are. Yeah. Like they might have seen your one clip that went super viral. You dropped a lot of gems. But for the people who don't know who you are, can you let us know like a little bit about your background? Where are you from, and what made you want to get into tech?
Yeah. So my background's pretty interesting. I basically bootstrapped the company to like $4 million, like a 6-month period, and we've sort of been maintaining that pace, but obviously that wasn't the start of my story, right? Like, I grew up basically in a king's house, and the wealth gap between him and I was just so vast. Like, for me, it was just a non-negotiable. I really wanted to, I guess, be as important as him. He inspired me a lot. I got to see what was possible, like, in the world, right? And so, for me, like, very early on, I made a very definite decision to want to become right, somebody that people respected.
Man, that's amazing. What made you want to get into tech though? Like, how'd you get into tech?
To be honest, I just remember like us not being able to pay the bills. Like, I was obviously a guy growing up at 19. I thought my life was completely over because I was turning 20 and I wasn't Jeff Bezos yet.
Yeah,
and like
the typical like Gen Z
yeah. It was just like,
how old are you now?
I'm 27.
27, okay.
Yeah, it's just like, oh man, I haven't made like $50 million yet. Like, my life is over.
Yeah,
like I went through that sort of thing, and I was extremely sad. But then also it heightened because at the time my family was going through a little bit of economic turmoil, and I just remember needing to find a way. And then partially during that time, I met my mentor, who came from Dubai to this country, and he exited, sold his company, $300 million.
Oh, wow.
And while I'm in this period of just trying to find myself, I knew I needed to find someone who had already done a bunch of cool stuff that I could access and gain mentorship from. And I came across his content, cold emailed him with a bunch of ways that I felt like I could serve him in his vision. He responded. And during that period of time, it was really strange because he'd never talked to me about business at all. It was a lot of philosophy-driven conversations that we were having about life not being a struggle and different things like that. But there was a specific moment where he was just like, look, man, every time I see you, you want to start a marketing agency, you want to start a wholesaling business, you want to be a real estate agent, or now you want to work with me. You're either going to be wildly successful or you're going to be in the desert begging for water. And ironically, he told me to mitigate some of that risk. And at the time, my tire was busted, so he came, fixed my tire, and like sent me home and told me not to come back until I found a job that would pay me at least $10,000 a month.
Okay.
So from there, I had a couple conversations with people that I worked at Apple with, and one of the individuals I actually helped upskill in sales so that he could keep his job, and he actually introduced me to an individual who then introduced me into tech. So it wasn't that I necessarily wanted that, I just needed money, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I feel that 100%. Like, a lot of people try to say, like, you got to be super passionate about tech, but I don't believe that, right? Like, it's a very, very well-paying career, and everybody needs to make money to survive, right? But I want to go back a little bit to you meeting your mentor and how you said that the first thing that you wanted to do was you told him how you can provide value to him and serve him, where a lot of people, they meet somebody who's very successful, and the first thing they do is ask, like, hey, can I pick your brain? So I found that really interesting. Like, what made you want to, like, see how you could provide him value instead of just saying, like, hey, I see you got a ton of money. Can I just pick your brain?
Yeah. I think for me, a lot of it, again, was growing up. I grew up in the church. And the way that you access the next level was just through honoring an individual. But also, typically, in that sort of atmosphere, there's a man who's typically well off, or at least for me, I grew up in a king's house, basically the voice of Africa as far as my Christianity was concerned. And yeah, I grew up in the most famous man's house, and I saw that everyone kind of wanted to be leeches in a sense, but also because my country, there's not much, and so you're either wildly successful or you're on the road, basically selling water, right? And so naturally, what's gonna happen is whenever you see someone with money, you're just gonna want to grab. And I never wanted to be that person. I always looked up to him, and not that I wanted to be better than him, but I think internally I wanted to be as important to the world as he was, and he inspired me a lot. And so I just wanted to be different, and I didn't know how to get close to him outside of giving him my heart or giving him some sort of skill. Now at the time I was really young, and so I didn't understand what to do,
right?
And so I just didn't. But I also watched my dad and how he accessed certain relationships, and a lot of it was by providing value first. I used to get mad at my father actually for just giving my whole house away. It's just like not literally, but like he would give my house away if he could. And again, like it's just through osmosis and paying attention. As a kid, I was really curious, and I just watched how you can access any room typically if you can honor people, like really old principles that I think a lot of people just ignore. And yeah, for me, it was just obvious, like a king has already gone, fought all the beasts, created his kingdom, and now he's at the table. And so for me, it kind of feels like I'm just walking into a room. I've done nothing. I come from a foreign land, and I just like pull up a seat and just sit next to him.
Right.
You know? And so for me, I think if you want a seat at the table, you kind of have to cut off the lion's head first, in a sense.
Yeah. Okay. So you were working at Apple, right?
Yeah.
So how much money were you making at Apple, and what were you doing? Were you like a retail employee there?
Yeah, retail. Yeah. I was a technical specialist, probably making like $16, $17 an hour. The main function of my job was to identify what the problem was with the phone and document and have it sent for repairing.
Yeah.
I hated that process.
Yeah.
So the easiest thing for me to do was to just sell people into new phones. And it was pretty cool because a lot of the people were coming in and they didn't have Apple Care. And so I was putting them in a better situation. And I actually believed in the product. But it was just reps, like 14 hours a day, selling phones. First month, I sold like $100,000 worth of phones.
Wow.
Yeah. And my time there, the store was tanking. I'm not quite sure how much of this I can disclose, but
yeah,
the store was tanking. And just through, I guess, sheer passion for the thing that I was doing, I found something that I really enjoyed doing. I was excited to get to work. I was first one to come, never wanted to leave, like that sort of story. And it was really genuinely because I loved connecting and loved sales. And yeah, I just realized that sales was just like a transferring of conviction. And I was really convicted about the product I was selling. And so through that, I didn't know that that's what I was doing, but I was sharpening a tool that would later on change my life.
Right.
Which was sales. So
yeah, a lot of people sleep on like the sales skills that you get from working in retail.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if y'all get commission at Apple or no. It's just pure hourly. Oh, okay.
I would have been rich, to be honest. Like, if they would have given me commission, holy. But I get it. You know? But yeah, from there, that store honestly started to produce more than all the other stores in the region, if I'm not mistaken, the nation. And then eventually they changed the standard for what that position was to be because of the work that I was doing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
wow.
And then COVID hit.
Man.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, so COVID hit, and then where did you go with your tech career? Like, where'd you go next?
So COVID hits, and I was just used to coming into the store, the sun was up, leaving the store, sun was down. And so there was no balance for me. And to be honest, I never seek balance anyway, so I was good with my life at the time. But then COVID hit, and then I just remember Apple trying to figure things out, and they shifted us all remotely.
Yeah.
And during that period of time, they were still trying to figure out, okay, what does this look like? How long is this going to last? COVID just came out. There's a thing that we can't necessarily see, but people are being affected.
Right.
People are losing their lives, and yeah, they were just trying to figure it out, keep people alive, keep people's jobs, and it was a lot of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized they were still paying people, obviously, throughout this period of time, and I just realized that there was an opportunity where that was the first time where I realized, oh, you can like get paid and basically do nothing. Because like compared to what I was doing, it was nothing. Like
right,
I was just on a computer all day. But when I was on site, I was walking around getting 30,000 steps a day. Like I was doing work, or what felt like work.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. I'm like, if you've ever worked like a retail job or at a restaurant or a labor-intensive job, like working in tech, like remotely from home, or even if you're just sitting at a desk, is like nowhere near the same amount as work.
Massive struggle for me. Because once I finally, took the boot camp that I took and got a job, I got scared that I was going to get fired.
Because you weren't doing that before.
I was just like, there's just no way.
Yeah. So you did a boot camp. How'd you get into this boot camp, and what was it for?
Yeah. Well, at the time, I didn't even know it was a boot camp. Again, like it was just a family member of someone that I helped at Apple. So like relationships, like I helped this kid get a job, and I talked to him about some of the things that I was struggling with at the time in my life. Yeah. And he took that guy's course, and it was just this guy in his basement, African guy with his kids yelling in the background. Like it wasn't great. It wasn't that magical or anything. But yeah, like he didn't take it seriously. Yeah. But once I have something in front of me that is a goal of mine, everything else just sort of becomes irrelevant. So as soon as I had a clear pathway to helping my mother and helping my family and like making something of myself, I just focused. And at the time I didn't know it was a boot camp. I just knew it was a guy in his basement.
Guy, it's funny. Like I interviewed somebody else. That's how he learned Linux. Yeah, it was a guy in his basement, literally teaching people Red Hat Linux.
By the way, there are hundreds of these. Yeah, underground.
Right.
Yeah, and I had no idea, but it was just this huge thing on the East Coast. It's really popular. Yeah, in DC and Virginia. Like, there's a lot of underground boot camps that have nothing to do with the internet.
Right. Yeah. So what did he teach you specifically though?
It was about like governance, risk, compliance.
Okay. So GRC.
So he built out the information security program for a massive company here. It was like a college. Yeah. He built out their program, and he helped me. I got to intern for him at his company while I was learning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he had a consulting company on the side, and he was teaching, and I got to intern. Okay. So it was this thing
Was he paying you?
No.
Okay.
But for me, I never
to
understood that. Yeah. Right? Like, I didn't care. Yeah. Because I knew that eventually the future was paying me. And so if I wasn't getting paid now, I know that there's a threshold of skill set that, like, the marketplace has to respect. That I knew. Right. And it was just from being around entrepreneurs, right? And I saw what people called value, especially where I was from. Like, there are pastors that, for example, you preach, someone comes and is giving you $1 million. Someone comes in and is giving you $100,000. Right. And so, like, I saw that, like, very, very early on, that there was like a threshold of becoming a certain type of person that the world must respect. Right. And so whenever I was in these situations where I can learn a skill or learn something new, I wasn't searching for money, because I knew at some point if I were to become a certain type of person, like, the money would just sort of come looking for me.
Got you. Yeah. So you did this boot camp, and you got the internship as well, where you weren't getting paid. How long did it take you from doing that boot camp to getting a paid, like, GRC role?
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Wow. So you were able to put that experience on your resume, so it wasn't that difficult. So once you got your first official GRC role, how much were you making there?
150,000. It was like 138. I got like a $13,000 sign-on bonus, and then there was like a 10% annual bonus, and then there were stock options.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went from working at Apple, $16 an hour,
Yeah.
to doing an unpaid internship for GRC,
Yeah.
to making about 150 total comp.
Yeah.
And what was the time frame of that? Like from Apple to to get
Felt like
there?
forever, but
yeah,
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Okay, so my mom had a home health
Yeah.
business, and there were policies that need to be written, and she was already doing it for a decade. And so I was doing a lot of this work for like a decade, and I had no idea.
You had no idea you were
Zero.
doing GRC.
So then whenever I got into this guy's program, I'm like, what? Like, I've been doing this.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the functions of the role, I was doing some of it at Apple. And so a lot of it was me realizing that money has been in my face the whole entire time, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
It was literally just someone tapping me on my shoulder, showing me like, hey, this is what you've been doing, this is what you're worth, and then me going to the marketplace. And so once I told him a lot of my experience, he essentially told me to start applying while I was learning like the generalized information, just baseline foundational stuff.
Yeah.
And so I start applying a week after I start his program,
Wow.
because I already had certain skill sets that
Yeah.
were relevant.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. Like,
Yeah.
you have transferable skills,
Yeah.
right? The only way you don't have transferable skills is if you literally weren't doing anything
Yeah.
your entire life.
Yeah.
Right? But everybody has some skills, whether you came from retail, whether you came from customer service,
Yeah.
like, you have transferable skills, and a lot of them transfer well into GRC.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's really dope. So you got that job making 156, and where did you go from there before you started your own company? Like, did you get another job? How did that go?
So remember, the only reason why I got that job was because my mentor kicked me out of his house.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I got that job, and I showed up to his house with a laptop, and I'm like, hey, I got 10K a month, so I'm here.
Yeah, I'm
And-
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he was like, dang, this kid did it fast. Yeah.
And you know, like, the story is a little strange, but I'll just make it, end user friendly. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, I come back, and he had an Excel sheet. And obviously I'm remote, and I'm not working that much a day from an hour's perspective.
Yeah.
And like, that's when I learned leverage. I was just like,
Yeah.
I can, for every activity, I can make $100.
Yeah.
But, typically at these jobs, in lower level jobs, maybe you're pushing carts, which are useful skills that you do need to learn, and they make sense even once you do start your business. I truly believe in people avoiding premature manifestation at all costs, and just staying at your job until you've acquired certain skills. But that's when I learned leverage, because I was realizing that for every input, I was getting $2,000 a week. Like, for every week, I was getting $2,000, but everything that I was doing in terms of investing wasn't that much in terms of effort.
Yeah, right.
Like, it just,
The beauty of tech.
effort was really low,
Yeah.
but my inputs were causing a lot of
Value.
positive impact and value for the organization, and so they paid me in return.
Right.
So then I was like, oh, so working hard is like a curse, basically.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, I just learned leverage. So I wasn't working that much a day, but I didn't take the hours that I wasn't working and do nothing with it. I invested everything that I possibly could into my mentor.
Gotcha.
And so I got to work with him.
Okay.
He threw an Excel sheet at me, and he was just like, we're going to build a program, so just call people and start selling. So I just took all the skills that I learned at Apple from selling, and I pick up the phone, and I just start helping him build his organization. And it was a fund. And so I basically turned the education program into a fund where people were coming in, and we were raising money from the people that we were educating about the product. And these were high-level guys with tens of millions of dollars that were wanting to come in and learn from a guy that they saw on TikTok.
Right.
And so I learned the power of content during that time. I got to sharpen my sales skills even further. All the customer service stuff that I thought was useless when I was working at Kroger and pizza shops, I got to use in this environment. All of the things as far as customer fulfillment that I learned in other lower level jobs that were paying me $10 an hour that I at the time thought were irrelevant. I shifted vehicles, and those skills were now super relevant, and I started to see the fruits of my labor from seeing what this guy was profiting with his organization that I was helping to build, right? And by week 2, there was like $100K in the bank account from the same skill that I was doing at Apple, right? And obviously I benefited financially from it. But yeah, like that period of my life was super transformative because I almost got a bird's eye view of my life since I was a kid. And I realized how all of the things up until that point, pushing carts, bagging groceries, selling phones at Apple, being the guy at the front at a pizza shop, like all of these skills that I thought were useless at the time actually served me in building my business now.
Yeah. Okay. So those skills that you had, what about the skills that you had when you worked the GRC role? Like what was your typical day in the life like when you were working that GRC role?
Yeah. It was cool. Like my manager at the time, he told me, dude, we're just going to throw you in the fire.
Yeah.
At the time they had no third party risk management program, which essentially is how you deal with other companies, other vendors that you're leveraging to get business done. Maybe you're using Zoom as an organization. And I'm interacting with these people. Most of the job, honestly, was just talking to people.
Talking to them about what, though?
Just like small talk. Yeah. How are you guys governing data? Like, obviously, after 30 minutes of talking about their cats and their dogs, and then like, like shouldn't be talking about this, but this is like 10 minutes of actually getting to know the organization, getting to know some of the key stakeholders that were involved in the engagement, getting to know how that organization was going to be treating our data. And it honestly is a people job, because a lot of it is, number one, governance is how an organization governs data, right? Should people come into work and take their Xbox and plug into the computers? Stuff like that, really basic things.
Right.
I remember one of the first jobs that they had me do was a risk assessment on a chatbot that was connected to our website. And because of the type of organization that we were, it wasn't our data, right? Insurance companies were our clients, and they opened up their data pool to us, so we didn't own the data. So how we treated the data was important.
Right.
And there was a specific tool that I was to do a risk assessment on, and everything passed. Like, they're good. But then I realized that because the elderly were our clients, and these insurance companies were asking us, hey, are you guys sharing your data with anyone else? And we were telling them no at the time. I just thought about the journey of an elderly person that trusts an organization. Like, I'm sure they'll go on your website, and then I'm sure they'll see this chatbot pop up, and then they're probably going to put their name in, like when they're like, hi, how are you? Do you need any help? And so technically we are sharing data with this chatbot. In the case that an elderly person comes on, puts their name in, that's a violation of HIPAA laws, right?
Right.
And so
they probably put more than that.
And then in the case that this chatbot gets hacked, that obviously doesn't translate well for us and our profit and our bottom line. So it's a lot of just soft skills and just understanding the human experience and talking to people. That honestly is the function of the role. And then a lot of just reading and writing. To be honest, like, if you're personable, if you can read, if you can write, those were the skills that I was leveraging.
Right. And then you had to learn like specific frameworks because it was GRC.
Exactly.
Which frameworks did you like focus on? I know it was like a
HIPAA, a lot of NIST, like internally how we were governing our risk management, PCI. It was across the board, and it was cool because my mentor, because he had a consulting company, he wasn't framework specific. The way that he constructed the learning experience for me, I got to do everything.
Right.
But the organization was like high trust, HIPAA, NIST for internal purposes, and yeah. And you know what it also was? Because of the vendors that we were leveraging, a lot of them were coming with new questions as far as different frameworks that we were using. And so we would start implementing things as customers came in.
Yeah.
And this was like $1 billion organization.
Right.
That was just figuring things out and then got to $1 billion. So it was cool. I just got to do a bunch of random stuff. There wasn't any moment where I felt like I was framework oriented. It was just a lot of variety.
Gotcha. So if somebody wanted to get like a GRC role today, you did an 8-week boot camp. Like, what type of skills do you think they need to focus on?
Yeah, like I said, like it's a lot of just, you typically already have the skills.
Gotcha.
Like I'm sure at your job, you're doing some sort of documentation. I know at Apple, for example, people were coming in, there was a lot of triaging, identifying things that were going on. And then for me, obviously I had the opportunity to work for my mom, and like we were writing policies. Maybe you're in customer service and you have like you're interfacing with different stakeholders, whatever it is. You might not know the language.
Right.
But like typically a lot of the skills that people have at lower leverage jobs can translate. You just need to find an atmosphere that will allow you to skill stack on top of the things that you've already been doing so that you can shift. But it's not that complicated. Like people who make things complicated, honestly, it's just a reflection of their inaction. It really has nothing to do with it being complicated or it being too much. Typically, anyone who's hungry enough, like you already have the skills. You just need someone else who has already conquered that space. You can access their mentorship, either pay them, or if you don't have money, you can use things like Honor to sort of get yourself in the door. Or yeah, and I think that you can learn the skills in a short amount of time and then just go get a job. But for me, it's like there's a volume and there's a degree of discipline that people are just gonna have to have. It's like the marketplace is really bloody.
Right.
If you're not gonna put in 500 to 1,000 applications a month, just stay at your job now, because like you're just not gonna compete.
Right.
And so you either find a way to pay someone else who would do it for $1 to $2 an hour to put in applications for you. But like if you're not optimizing for volume in the space as far as applications, just take a seat. And like that's number one. And then number two, people should be finding a way to set coffee chats with people who are in the industry and having certain conversations, because at the end of the day, like 80% of the time, ATS scanner is going to get you up out of here.
Yep.
And then like obviously during the interview process, a lot of these startups and people that are hiring, they just hire who they know. Like that's just what I found to be true. Is
it's either who they know or who was referred, especially at the startups. It's like what I've noticed, if you at a startup, if you don't have a referral, you probably are not going to get a job at a startup, because like the startup that I have worked at, almost everybody came from the same companies. We had a bunch of people from CrowdStrike. We had a bunch of people from, I think I could say this.
No, you're good.
I think I can say it. We had a bunch of people from DARPA. Like they all were referred from somebody that they knew, and like I got the job because I was referred from somebody I knew. So everybody knew everybody, and there was like a bunch of cliques, and that's just how startups are, and that's how a lot of companies are. But it's really prevalent in startups.
Yeah, you know what I found too, like 90% of wealth transactions happen between people that know each other or trust each other. Even in organizations, like organizations only do business with people that they trust and other organizations that they trust. And so the function, even of, as a GRC analyst, is like you're ensuring not only that your company can be trusted by other companies, but the vendors that the organization is using, like Zoom, like Slack, are also trustworthy.
Right.
Right. And same as it is in the marketplace, it's like in today's world, if you can't immediately come in and show an organization that you can provide immediate impact, there's just no way you can compete. Not with people like me or you or like someone else in the marketplace, right? Like,
Right.
the greatest founders understand that what takes a company from good to great is human capital. And so a lot of it is just getting the wrong people off the boat and getting the right people on the boat. And so building a business, honestly, is just leadership.
Yeah.
And being somebody worth following, right? And so even me now, understanding that, I'm constantly looking at the marketplace for sharks, like different people who are super talented.
Yeah.
And what I'm realizing is like the super competent people already have jobs.
Yeah.
And so I'm having to do a lot of poaching or, hey,
You have to poach.
yeah,
There's
or
nothing
like
else you could do.
Yeah, it's just what it is, and a lot of that is because the marketplace is filled with people who just have desires. It's like, I want to make money, I want to like have my life be better, I want, which is fine. I think there's there's a dimension of advancement that requires you to want, right? But there's also a faith component and like a responsibility component for advancement. It's like, okay, now that I've desired that I want this thing in front of me, whether it's get into tech, for most individuals in the space, right? Understand that like that's only the first step.
Right.
There's also a responsibility component that you're going to have to assume in upskilling yourself and making yourself valuable, because that's the thing about the marketplace, right? It's almost like an invisible radar that everybody knows is there but ignores.
Yeah.
There's just a threshold of competence that it just can't ignore. And so it's not really useful to go chase money or chase someone to pick their brain. Like, the actual high leverage activity anybody could be doing is just go on LinkedIn and look at six-figure jobs and see what they're paying. Like, look at the job descriptions. Like, get familiar with it. Go into ChatGPT. Hey, what does this mean? And like, try to learn these skills. And I can almost guarantee you, I can guarantee you 100%, once you can go to an organization and say, hey, here's my portfolio of things that I've done. I took it upon myself maybe to do research and write different policies tailored to you. You dump it into a recruiter's inbox on LinkedIn. And now there's AI in your LinkedIn outreach.
Yeah.
It's like, there's just
getting
no
really easy.
There's just no excuse.
Yeah,
it's like, talk to 5 to 10 people a day in the industry on LinkedIn, get to 500 to 1,000 applications a month, learn the required skills that you're seeing on job descriptions. You will outpace 99% of people.
Right.
Because most people just don't want to do anything.
Yeah, they don't. They don't want to do anything. And then the thing is crazy is like, I'm sure some people are going to hear this. They're going to hear you saying like, do 500 to 1,000 applications a month. And it seems like a lot. But for a lot of industries, there is easy apply now.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, 500 applications a month is like maybe 15 applications a day. And if you set up profiles on a lot of these places, just a few clicks, you can do one application in a minute or two.
Yeah.
So it's literally just taking that time and going to find the jobs that you can actually apply to.
Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly.
So I recommend people that too, like bare minimum, you need to be applying to 10 jobs a day.
Yeah.
And all the people that have listened to me that apply to 10 jobs a day, they end up with a job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like they
Yeah.
end up with a job, right? So I want to talk about how you ended up making your company, right? We haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah.
How'd you come up with that idea for your company, and what do you actually do?
So I obviously, during my stint with my mentor, I was really good at building companies. I built his, and he was already at like a $200 million run rate in a very short amount of time. And for me, at the time, you know, that's who I was dedicated to. I'm just like an obsessive person. I'm a loyal person. I love this guy. He changed my life forever.
Right.
I just want to serve here until it's my time to depart. And yeah, during that time, I think he recognized like some light in me that at the time I didn't necessarily see in myself. And he pushed me to start. And so it was actually his doing, which ironically, I was actually going to start the company that I have now before
You met him.
Yeah, but it wasn't until I joined his company that I realized, oh wait, I know nothing about finance.
Yeah.
I know nothing about accounting, hiring, firing, building employee roadmaps, setting targets, KPIs. But I knew none of these things needed to be done in order to move the needle.
Right.
But I got to get some jump shots there, and you don't really know much about something until you
actually do it.
Right. So, yeah, it was cool. I realized very quickly that I shouldn't start a business yet, but over time I gained the skills that that almost made it unreasonable for me not to. And I was almost like a little bird that got forced out of the nest because he thought I was ready.
Yeah.
And I didn't think so. But then I started, and it was almost like, kind of like you probably at your job now. I can probably stick you into an environment, and just based on your competency, you'll probably be able to look at things and immediately start to make impact where you can because you have the skills.
Right.
It was the same thing with the business. I almost could see it. I could see the floor, and I immediately knew that there was a market gap in terms of compliance services for startups wanting to sell into larger enterprises, and their constraint was the fact that they weren't compliant. And
so it all came back to that compliance factor.
Yeah. So for me, it was just like, I was just stacking all these skills. I wasn't doing anything different. I just did what I knew that could be valuable to the marketplace, right? So I started, I wanted to help other compliance companies grow, because typically sales and marketing is their constraint, but that's not necessarily mine. Like, I understand, I had those skills, but then I realized that, again, there was a talent shortage in the marketplace. And even if I were to help these companies grow, they don't have access to the talent pool.
Right.
And so I almost had to reverse engineer what my actual goal was and build a talent pool of people. And now we essentially provide services to companies, leveraging people with like lots of experience and people with, quite a bit of experience. But the way that we upskill people is by pairing them with people who've been in the industry for 20 years.
Okay.
And I genuinely believe in strategic mentorship because it changed my life personally. And so, yeah, they get to do work for other consulting companies internally, work for my organization, and then work for organizations that need compliance services once they're ready.
Okay. So you're training these people up, you're staffing them, and like, what else are you doing? Like, how's that whole process going?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. Like, it's not necessarily staffing. Like, we literally do the compliance services.
Okay,
right?
So you provide the compliance services. Okay, so you're training them and bringing them into your org.
Exactly.
And then you already have the work for them, so they don't really need to go out and find it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's like contracts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we use a very small percentage of the people that we upskill. You know what I realized too? It's like a lot of the job descriptions that people are writing are like irrelevant and
to what the actual job
like
is.
Quite useless. Like a lot of the people writing the job descriptions don't even do the job.
Right.
And so they'll be asking for X amount of experience. And so you can be someone with 1 year of experience, maybe 6 months, whatever. You can apply to these jobs that probably will reject you. But even in my position, my manager just liked me.
Right.
And for 99% of our call, like, we were talking about Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, but he just liked me as an individual. And so, yeah, you can just like sort of shoot your shot. So the majority of the people that come into our infrastructure, once we upskill them, we just send resumes out to companies that need them, and they do great on these interviews. A lot of them are going into pretty large organizations. I don't know if I can mention names, but some of the organizations that you use every single day or you're familiar with, and a lot of them are providing immediate impact. A lot of their companies like love them and want to start partnerships and different things like that, just from the work that we've done. So if you can find the right atmosphere and get upskilled, like, you're pretty fine. But yeah, that's our company. It's like it's just like a flywheel. We provide services, but because I wanted to do it for like nations and not just like organizations, I knew I needed way more bandwidth. And so we have an education vertical attached to the compliance services. So even there's like SaaS companies now that are looking to partner up with us to upskill their current staff.
Oh, wow.
In GRC, like their sales team.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the sales guys are good at sales, but like they can't communicate compliance to CISOs.
Yeah.
Because again, like you're a SaaS company wanting to sell your services into these organizations, but then they're asking
they have to
you
be
about,
compliant, right? So instead of like having to get
Yeah.
them on a call with another person,
Yeah.
if you upskill your salespeople,
you
then
just
they
shorten,
yeah.
collapse the sales cycle time. So
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty cool what we've built. I didn't know how impactful it was until like I was going into my country, and then I'm hearing about, you know, this $100 million that they're looking to give to initiatives like ours, and this $50 million that they're looking to give to initiatives like ours. And then people are like now sort of recognizing me from some of the stuff that we're putting out.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I've said nothing about cybersecurity
Right.
on my platform.
Yeah.
Quite intentionally, and a lot of it was because most of the constraint that we deal with as an organization is all in the brain. Like it's all in the mind.
Yeah.
With individuals who come from like well-meaning backgrounds, but they weren't exposed to environments like ours. And you just have people who don't necessarily believe in themselves like at all.
Right.
And yeah, a lot of it is just the thinking patterns of people.
Right. So since you're upskilling people, like what are some of the main things that people who are trying to like either break into tech or break into cyber, whatever it is, like break into a new technical career, like what are some of the main challenges that you're seeing with them?
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing challenges too. So
Yeah.
I just want to see like what type of challenges are you seeing with them? Because mindset is definitely huge.
Yeah.
Work ethic for sure. Being able to stay disciplined. And then overall just believing that you can do it.
Yeah. You know, for me, and these are like my own personal philosophies, like,
Yeah.
but like every skill is only as useful as your belief system, right? Anything that you learn is only as useful as your belief system. And so for me, I believed very strongly, just through being next to my mentor and like being next to someone who had already achieved, telling me, hey, like, I believe in you, you're this type of person. Which, by the way, like, there were moments in my life where I didn't necessarily have the strength to be disciplined. I didn't have the strength to go and get skills, but I had to go borrow another man's conviction. And just from being in his atmosphere and just through osmosis and being next to this guy who believed that the world was a very predictable place and that you could just become a certain type of person and then the marketplace will respect you. I got to feel what that was, like being next to him. I got to feel what peace was. And during that period of time, I started to learn that, like, as my beliefs started to shape, without me even worrying about the next skill that I needed to acquire, but as I started paying attention to things like honor and being a little bit more respectful and just being a little bit more mindful of my speech and paying attention when people were speaking and asking the right questions. Once I started just learning about that your life is just a reflection of your most dominant thought pattern, and I started getting away from the negativity and getting away from people who were a little bit constrained as far as their imagination was concerned.
Right.
Like I had to almost leave my own house because at the time, obviously, my house was a little bit in turmoil, and so, you know, naturally, there's a little bit of stress, and you know, people are complaining and different things like that, and so I had to make really hard decisions, like creating distance between me and my mother, who I love a lot, and creating distance from me and my father, who I love a lot, and being around someone who had a little bit more abundance as far as the mind was concerned. And funny, it was almost like the world just started to respect the fact that I was honoring the growth pattern and the growth protocol, and things just started to find me that I never thought would find me, just because I focused on my belief system.
Right.
And so no matter where you are in the world, no matter what you're doing, no matter how low you are, I think the first rule for getting invited into any sort of environment, if it's tech or anywhere that you're trying to break into, which that's another thing with the breaking in thing, but
Yeah.
it's like if somebody broke into my house, I'd get real mad. But yeah, like I really believe you will get invited into these spaces if you can just, number one, focus on your belief system, which I believe is the first rule of any sort of advancement or any sort of you getting invited into these spaces. Just like focus on your beliefs first.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a little bit ethereal, and it's like, oh yeah, like I get it. But you really have to pay attention to your thinking.
Yeah.
Because these environments, they just respect a certain level of thinking. And no matter how competent you are, they really think they can train a monkey. So you're just going to get exited out at some point. And yeah, it's just like a law. Like just focus on your thinking patterns before you shift into wanting to acquire skills. So
Yeah, so you talk a lot about like using leverage.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think that people can do now who want to get into tech? Like, what can they do to like leverage themselves or leverage their skills to get to where they want to be at faster? Because a lot of people aren't really familiar with like leverage. Like I tweet about it a lot too.
Oh,
like,
really?
Yeah, like you gotta use leverage as much as you can.
Yeah.
And like I'm always thinking of new ways for me to use leverage to get to where I want to be way faster.
yeah. You know what's quite interesting? It's like, it kind of depends, right? Like, I learned leverage just through exposure. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, like I was at Apple 14 hours a day working, and I'm working, but they're paying me $16, $17 an hour, no commission. I'm capped, but then I'm doing certain activities for these organizations that's taking me 30 minutes, an hour, but then like every year I'm getting paid like $150,000 to do this like really, really easy activity. Yeah. But like the value that I was providing for this organization was so massive that it didn't matter.
Right.
Right. And so
yeah,
if you're, for example, or like with me, when I was with my mentor, I'm selling iPhones. Mm-hmm. I'm selling $100,000 worth of iPhones a month. But then I take that same sales skill, which, you know, at the time was really important for me to have that season. But I take the same thing that I was doing and I just shifted it to another vehicle that produced more value for the organization. And like, I got way more money for the same skill, and just by shifting.
Yeah, yeah.
And so a lot of it is just paying attention to the opportunity vehicle that you're in. Like just plant your feet and assess where exactly am I in the organization? What am I doing? How much value, like revenue, am I generating from doing this activity? So if it's like I'm pushing carts, how important am I to the organization, right? Yep. There's a season where pushing carts is important, but once you master pushing carts, it's like, what is another hard problem that I can solve for this organization that doesn't necessarily require my sweat? Because, you know, as you go up the value ladder in an organization, you just sweat less. It's so weird, but like the more
you use your mind more. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, you start out thinking like, oh, if I just work harder, if I work more jobs, if I just work harder, I'll make more money. But once you realize that, like, no, like the people that make the most money, they're not getting off of work, their back's not hurting, besides like athletes, right? Yeah. You know, outside of athletes, what they're doing is they're using their mind and the skills that they have to get paid, right? Yeah. And you don't have to, when you're in tech, you don't get paid per time you like type on a keyboard. You get paid for the value that you create, right? Yeah. Or just being that person that, hey, if anything goes wrong, we know we can call on you to fix it. And that alone is worth six figures, right? So that's what people, like, that's that mindset shift that people have to make, is that you don't have to work super hard to make six figures. You just have to get the right six-figure skills, and you'll work way less. Yeah,
and I think, you know, even like the six figures conversations, like, people are going to get there and realize it's really not that crazy. And like, you know, my first job was like around $150,000, and another organization paid me like $200,000 thereabout, doing the same sort of stuff, working even less.
Right.
But I was watching my mentor make $1 million every 30 days,
Yeah.
like on the side, just looking for land for other rich people.
Yeah.
So like,
It's just the value that you
Yeah,
create
yeah.
and who you're creating it for. Like you said, that opportunity that you can identify,
Yeah.
right? So like even like you said, once people get to six figures, they'll realize, okay, 100K like is great, but they don't realize how close they are to 200,000 a year, $300,000 a year using the exact same skills.
Yeah.
Like you don't need anything else, and that's what a lot of the content I've been making recently is trying to get people to realize that you don't need anything else to get to like doubling your salary
Yeah.
or get to those high six-figure salaries that you want. You probably have all the skills already, but you don't have the right mindset to believe that you should be making that money.
Yeah.
Right. So, because like I quit my jobs. I've quit jobs that paid over $200,000 like twice, 2 or 3 times now. 3 times now. Yeah. And I've never. I've never felt any way about it. Like, oh, it's not the end of the world. Like, if I want another job, I'll just go get another one that pays $200,000.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, how would you do that? Well, first, I'll only apply to jobs that pay $200K. I'll only reach out to people that can put me in connection with jobs that will pay me this type of money.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like the first thing is like people knowing that they're worth this amount of money and setting the parameters of the jobs they're looking for.
Yeah. If people are wanting to get hired 6 figures and beyond, people are just wanting to get hired at all. So for me, anything more than $16 an hour was better. You need to focus on skills that make you unhireable. Like get really good at sales, because 99% of people will not pay the price to get really, really good. That's just what I found. Once you pay the price to become really, really good, the marketplace just respects you. If it's GRC, like shifting into a place or finding a mentor of some sorts who will allow for you to work either underneath him or for their organization, finding a way to get upskilled and getting really, really good at it, and telling people about what you're doing on LinkedIn, like making blogs and talking about research that you're doing as far as your journey and trying to get really, really good at this thing. The marketplace will hear you. Like, there's enough space for great people, like enough space. And a lot of it is because most people aren't willing to pay the price for it. And so for me, even for an industry that I've spent not that long in, right, as far as being public facing, like I've generated millions and millions of dollars, and I've gotten into the 1% within an industry,
Right.
because I got really good at the thing, right? And so there's enough space for competence. And so if people are looking to get hired, just pick one skill, right? Like one general skill. You go on LinkedIn, you search, you filter for 6-figure jobs, and then you just go read the job descriptions and try to figure out, okay, what are these job descriptions saying that they're wanting? If you don't understand the job description, stick it into ChatGPT, tell it to explain to a 5th grader, which is the average reading level for people in the United States. Like, reword the stuff, read it, try to understand it, and you'll see that there are skills like sales, like marketing, or some sort of customer service function which translates into customer success, right? And so you can find skills that are looking to pay you the money that you're looking for. It's just finding that thing, identifying it, eliminating everything else, and just focusing for 6 months, really. And you're 6 months away from changing your life, like forever.
Yeah.
Most people.
I agree, but a lot of people don't want to sacrifice that time to get to that point, right? Like, you'll see a lot of people online. I don't know if it's happened to you yet, but they always ask, like, well, how fast can I do this, right? How fast can I get this done? The time is going to pass regardless.
Yeah.
So it's really irrelevant,
Yeah.
right? Like, what you're doing right now, 12 months from now, if you continue to do the same stuff,
Yeah.
your life's not going to be any better. But if you change up what you're doing, focus on gaining the right skills, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from now, you'll probably be making at least 2 or 3 times what you're making, if not more, depending on where people are.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I was actually having this conversation with someone on my staff. The key to speed isn't hurrying. The key to speed is just waiting. And what I found is rushing to get the car too soon, rushing to get the house too soon, typically the only reason why you're doing those things is because there's someone you're trying to lie to. That's number one. And the thing about liars is reality snaps back and slaps them in the face at some point. And so you'll start to lose the things that you tried to force the world to give you. And so it's way much better to realize that you're actually asking the wrong question. It's not about how fast is it going to take. Even though I understand what they're saying. They're saying, hey, I'm in a really bad situation. Like, how fast is this going to get me out? I understand. But the actual question is asking, how do I get really competent at this one skill? Like, how do I get really, really good at it? And finding someone who can collapse time for you and take 10 years of their time, right? Like, you've been doing this for a decade now.
Yeah.
It's like, people don't understand that they can either partner up with you, maybe pay for your program of some sort, and you are essentially collapsing the 10 years of your time and handing it to them
Right.
for whatever price, right? And then if you don't have money, they need to figure out a way to either make you more money or save you more time.
Right.
And
or watch my free content.
or watch your free content
Yeah.
because you're doing that, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you're collapsing time in 30 seconds.
Right.
Like, the things that you're saying feels like a 30-second clip, but like, people don't understand this is 10 years in 30 seconds.
Right.
And if you can respect it, the marketplace will eventually respect you. But because people don't respect the word when it comes, the word can never become flesh. And then they're just stuck in this loop of just searching for what's the next thing that can make me feel like I'm moving, and just watching content and like not even paying attention, just mindlessly scrolling.
Right.
And so I think the reality is most people just won't do anything. And most people, just like at the start of the marathon, already know that they're going to lose. And I realized that there's just a lot of belief reconstruction that needs to be done. As far as people are concerned, I don't think hope is lost. I think that people can actually become. There's like a process to become.
Yeah.
And so a lot of even my content, I don't talk about business. I don't talk about money a lot of the time. And a lot of it is me trying to build a culture with the people that I make content for about their belief system truly being the center of anything that will eventually profit them, and like their spirituality, right? And so for me, I just know that these are the anchors, the fundamental anchors, because at the end of the day, I can tell you how simple it is to make six figures, but so long as you don't believe, right, it will never profit you. And so there just needs to be a redesigning of people's belief architecture. And I think people just need to start there first and foremost. Like, take 90 days, and the one thing that you need to do is audit your life and ruthlessly deal with anyone that isn't profitable as far as your future is concerned. Anybody that's negative, anybody, that seems to have some sort of bad luck, like just, for a season, isolate yourself and stretch your capacity, and just, deal with the negativity by, you don't have to be rude, but just like slowly isolate yourself and just start to audit all of the character traits that don't really profit you. And that's where you need to start. It's not the job, it's not none of those things. Those things can take 6 months, but it truly is just dialing in your belief system first, so that eventually whenever you go and learn that skill, you have a clear mind, like you have a profitable mind. And because at the end of the day, if you pay attention to a Jeff Bezos, and this might be a little bit far-stretched for people, but like if you pay attention to a Jeff Bezos, or even once you do finally get into tech, you'll realize your managers and your CISOs are using their mind. Like, they are not using their hands to produce income.
Right.
They're using their thoughts. And so if you do not have quality thoughts, you cannot be a quality employee that they can then hire for 6 figures. So
Definitely. So did you always think like this, or like when you did your mentor help you like get this thought process? I know you were saying like your mentor was telling you like, hey man, life's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't say life was easy. So I asked him if life was a struggle. And he's just like, no, Habibi, like, life is not a struggle. But it was the audacity that I felt and the peace that I felt when I was around him that actually communicated that to me. And I then watched how the world even treated him. right? Like we'd go into places and it seemed like everybody wanted to be his friend. Everybody wanted to be nice. Everybody wanted to stick their hands in their pocket and give. And at the time, people were running away from me. Like people just were not wanting to entertain me. And I'm like, wait a minute. So are people selfish or not? And then I realized, wait, nobody's selfish. People just choose who they want to give to. And he just made it so unreasonable for people not to give to him because he was just such a kind person, so loving. He truly cared about people and their journey, where they were wanting to go. People felt safe around him. And I had to practice those things, like being around him, watching how he looked at people whenever they were speaking, watching how he would take problems and, you know, he would align with people whenever there were problems, but he didn't allow for certain negativity to enter his atmosphere. It just was non-negotiable for him. And so it was a lot of those things that I got to witness that then informed me of, okay, this is the type of person that money respects, right? And I just started to evolve after time, and then my thoughts just started to become just a reflection of the atmosphere I was in most consistently, which was his, right? And so it's not necessarily that I always thought this way, but I do believe that there was some sort of witness in me, because I think truth has a frequency, right? And like whenever he said it, I did not believe him. That's the thing. Like, if it was just like, what the heck? It was almost like he pulled something out of me that I knew was always there. And then there was just almost this witness in my spirit that what he was saying was the truth.
Right. Even though you hadn't really fully experienced it yet. Yeah.
But even with that, I'm just like, I already know what my worst case scenario is, so I might as well believe him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I believed him, and I believed him with all my heart. And then, like, I sacrificed everything. There were times where I would call my mom and ask her to Zelle me money as a grown-ass man to go to this guy's house and go work for free. And everybody thought I was crazy. Everyone.
Yeah.
My mom's like, what are you doing? Like, everyone's looking at me, and they were all worried and concerned. But I just, for whatever reason, there was just some sort of witness within me that that's where I just needed to be, and that's where I needed to stay. And it's crazy. As a resultant effect of me staying, I went way faster than all the other years where I was trying 10,000 different things.
On your own, yeah.
Yeah, and then I just stopped. That I made like a very key decision in my life that, like, I think still to this day changed my life. And I just stopped making decisions, and I just started following direction. And so he was giving me direction on what to do, who to become, and I just listened. I didn't make any decisions. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And funny enough, like, as I started to transform, everything that I was looking for just started to look for me.
Yeah. And that's really the same thing with tech too, right? The people that want to get into tech, they're trying to figure out all these different ways, go all these different paths, when there are some people who literally have the blueprint out here for you, but they don't want to trust the process.
Yeah.
They
you know who those people are?
Who?
I have a theory. Okay?
Yeah.
So I don't know how you operate whenever you go into a grocery store.
Yeah.
If I don't know where something is, I'm immediately looking for someone that can...
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah,
See?
yeah.
So, like, there's just, like, certain things I just knew, right? And so people like that typically...
Especially in the grocery store, because nothing is where you think it's going to be at. So I'm like, okay, I got to find somebody.
Yeah. So with all due respect, it's like, treat your career like a grocery store. Whenever you go in and you don't know where things are, ask somebody who works there. Ask someone who already knows. And ask a bunch of people and just see what the average answer is, and I'm sure you'll find it on All8, right? And
I would focus on asking the people who are where you want to be at, because I see that as well. I see a lot of people, they ask people who are not in the space that they want to be in, right? Like, you might see somebody who maybe they're like, hey, I want to get into cybersecurity, and then they go ask like a data analyst, like, hey, can you help me get into cybersecurity? Or what should I do, right? Ask somebody who is exactly where you want to be before you just go start asking a bunch of random people.
Yeah. No, that's actually like a really profitable statement, because for me, people always ask me, like, how do I find a mentor? And my answer is always find whatever the personified version is of the goal that you have, right? So, like, first you're going to have to find your own aim. Like, that number one, like most people just don't even have those like goals like at all.
Yeah.
Or they have many goals, which is also as good as having no goal. So just find your goal, and typically there's someone in the marketplace. Now you're on TikTok, you're on LinkedIn. There are different people who are your goal already, like you said, right? And aim at those people and send them a gift, send them a coffee, and just do things that feel trivial to you. Like do things like buying them a virtual coffee gift card from Starbucks. Like I promise you, most people don't do that.
Yeah.
So I had like 3,000 followers maybe a month ago, and there's like, I think we just crossed 100 grand or something like that.
100K, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And for every 1,000 messages that I get from people, there's only one person who offers to do something for me and asks for nothing at all.
Mm.
And so, and I'm not asking for anybody to buy me virtual coffee, right? But yeah, most people just don't want their brains to be picked. I don't, right? And like, I pick my own brain for 24 hours a day. It's like a really ruthless process every day.
Yeah.
And so for me, most of the time, I just want someone to ask me if I'm okay. Most people don't do that. And so
Half the time they don't even say hello. Nah. They're just immediately asking like, hey, help me get in tech.
Yeah. Help me. I'm like, what? But it's really interesting. But you know, they're well-meaning, and I understand that. But there are just so many things that they could be doing just from a person-to-person, like humanity perspective, that would get them way faster than, you know, searching everywhere for, or doing everything that isn't necessarily profitable, trying to start a marketing agency or trying to start this marketing thing or that. It's just like way too many people just doing random things.
Right.
People can collapse 10 years into 1 year just by accessing the right person.
Definitely. So before we wrap this up, I have a couple of questions for you. Just like two questions for you. So like, how has tech changed your life?
Yeah. I mean, it afforded me the opportunity to like breathe rarefied air. Like I work with people that I love. Mm-hmm. I've hired my friends. I've hired my family members. I have staff in different parts of the world that trust me. I feel like I'm doing like really cool things, right? And I'm a 27-year-old kid who always wanted to be here but didn't know how. But it afforded me like the impossible, right? And so, yeah, that's number one for me. Like, it changed like everything. I didn't know a lot of the things that I'm doing now would come as a result effect of me being in this industry, but I have deep respect for this industry. And yeah, like I plan to leave my mark on the industry in like a positive way, but I respect it, like first and foremost, for everything that it's done for everyone else and then for me. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So there's a question I ask everybody before the end of the episode. So if you could give people one piece of advice to get to where you are today, what would it be? It's a tough one.
Okay, so you have a tech audience, right? So I'm just gonna like...
Yeah. But even if they are a tech audience,
I strongly disagree with breaking into tech. And I just have this thing, it's just common sense. It's like, if someone were to break into my house, you know, I live in Texas, so there are just effects with doing something like that. Mm-hmm. I think people should aim to be invited, and the way that you're invited is you're a person that people want to be in the industry, right? And so if you're looking to sort of be where I'm at, or, you know, where I was whenever I had a job, I just became somebody that the company wanted. Just like I said, like go on the job descriptions, really basic things that most people ignore, and just do the boring work. Those job descriptions are telling you who they want.
Right.
Become that person, and you have a way better opportunity to sort of get invited into the space. So just look at job descriptions as like an invitation letter, but they are for the people that, you know, can wear the clothes that they're asking for them to wear. So yeah, just don't break in, because in Texas, like, it comes with ruthless effects.
Yeah.
Just get invited. So that would be probably my number one advice.
Okay. No, I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. Everybody could apply that.
Yeah.
So that wraps up this episode.
Yeah.
I think this is definitely one of my favorite ones. You talked about a lot of like high level mindset things. You talked about high level entrepreneur things and things that people can do to get into tech and to leverage their skills. So thank you so much for inviting me here. Right, because you invited me here. I didn't come you didn't come to my spot. I came to your spot.
No.
So so where can people find you at, Augustine? Like on social media, your company, things like that?
Yeah. I mean, my company name is Symposia. My Instagram is pretty simple. My name's Augustine. But you just replace the U's with the letter V.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me. I'm probably the guy with his legs crossed on this great couch. So, but yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's so crazy because like I was consuming your content for a couple years, and we never knew each other. But like I said, like the marketplace respected me at some point, and you know, like I like have like a lot of deep respect for what you've been doing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Donnie is the one who was like, "Yo, you have to interview Augustine. Like, you just have to."
Yeah,
I was like, "Okay,
it's crazy.
okay." I was like, "All right,
It's crazy,
cool." But yeah, no, thank you so much for coming out. I really hope people watch this entire episode from start to finish. But that wraps up this episode of Day in My Tech Life. My name is Simone B, also known as Bees. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. We'll see you on the next one.